All right, welcome to this bland, oh no, I hope it's not a bland new lesson, brand new lesson. And we're just gonna take a look at the same project that we had prior before we get into a more real world use case example, because I wanted to show you how to take that torus and how to move it and do whatever you want with the help of two different things, which is what this video is going to teach. The first thing is I'm going to show you how to use Dat.gui in order to help you quickly position elements, 3D elements, without having to tamper around with the coordinates for your rotation and your scale and your position through code, because it's much easier just to just use this little GUI, the Dat.gui, to make these changes real quick on the fly. And so that's going to be tremendously helpful. So let's go ahead and get started. And what I'm going to do is go to View, Terminal, and npm I. So npm I is short for install. So it's going to install all the dependencies from the Node Package Manager. And after that, we're going to do npm run dev. And that will load up what should be basically consistent with what we had in the previous lesson. It's just a spinning torus on a transparent background that says rotation down here. Okay, so what we're gonna do is I'm gonna move this over and we're gonna change just a couple things. So we're gonna keep the torus geometry exactly the same as is. However, just for a different look, we're gonna change this from a mesh basic material to a mesh toon material. Now, when we do that, we can see that it turns black or almost black. Why is that? Well, it's because if something like this happens in the future, just look at the intensity of your lights that you're adding. In this case, the second parameter of the point light is the intensity, which is 0.1. If we bump this up to 1, look what happens. We can now see the shading that's applied to the toon material. All right, so the mesh toon material. It is very cool. It might be an aesthetic that you like. All right, so now that we've made that change, I'm also going to go ahead and change the actual color of the material. Right here, it's this yellow. We're going to change this to black. And when we change it to black, you're going to see we lose all of the shading. And you'll see this is, I didn't have to change it black, but I'm just choosing to do it because I'm going to show you how to change the color as well and tween it. So we're going to go black to like a red or something like that. Now up here, as you can see, we can see closed controls. That's because we've created a reference to the Dat.gui. So that's what we're going to focus on now. We want to be able to move this thing around on the X, Y, and Z axis through our Dat.gui, so that we could determine where we want this thing to be placed quickly and easily. And then once this gives us the values of where we want this to be placed, we can then go ahead and take those values and specify them in terms of the geometry's position. So here's how this works. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to create a folder, a Dat.gui folder. All right, so I guess underneath lights or so is where we'll put this. So let's put, let's zoom up here a bit. Control B to get rid of that sidebar. We're going to say Dat.gui, and we're going to add a folder. So we're going to say const. We'll call this ring folder because we're going to call this element right here a ring, and that's what we want to control. So const ring folder equals, and we specify gui.add folder ring. Great. So when we do that and you save it, you'll see right up here it says ring, and there's nothing. You know, when we expand it, nothing's there. So let's go ahead and add some properties there. And what we can do is say ring folder, not ringer folder, ring folder, there we go, dot add sphere dot position. All right, so in ring dot position, we will now have access to the other methods that are available in there, or the properties. Like for instance, X, Y, and Z is found within sphere.position. Just like in the point light.position, we see X, Y, and Z right up here. So what we do is in the second parameter, we simply specify which property it is that we want to be able to move around through and control through Dat.gui. So in this case, we could just put X, and then you can also specify a couple of these other chained properties where it says minimum, -3, a maximum of 3, and a step of 0.01. So what exactly is that? Well, let's save it. And if I expand this, you can now see we have something labeled X, and we have this little slider where in the middle is 0. All the way to the left would be -3, and all the way to the right would be 3. And then the step right here means what type of fraction is it going to increment when we change this. So 0.01 gives us a lot of fine control. Here's what this looks like. If I move this, look at that. So if we move to the left, -2.52 is right here. Move to the right, 3 is all the way over here. So now we can kind of like easily position this, say, oh, this is exactly where we want it to be. What is this value? Oopsie, let me zoom up. It's -1.33. So then if I wanted this to be there or seated there, then by default, when like the page loads or whatever, we can just take our sphere and we can set it in that position. So we can say sphere.position.x equals -1.33. Now, when we save it, by default, when we refresh, it's going to show up there. And you could do this obviously with rotation. You could do it with scale, the position on the X, Y, Z as well. So let's take this off. And real quickly, let's go back and try to control more, actual properties. So we could do X, Y, and Z. So I'll hold Shift, Alt, down arrow key a couple times. We're going to put Y here and Z here, and that's it. So now we can go back, expand the ring, and now we can do Z, which is going to make it appear like it's scaling down, but it's really not. What's happening is we're just changing the Z axis, which is how close or how far away the object is from the camera. So you're not actually scaling it down in this context. The Y axis, of course, we can have go all the way up here, down here, move this over here for the X axis. So now, because we only give ourselves 3 and -3, it's not going all the way to the side. So if we wanted to expand that to say 6 or so, you'll see that, let's just do 7, it'll go pretty much the full distance, or it should get close at least if we change to X. So yeah, there we go, all the way across. So this really is helpful as a tool for debugging, but also help planning your scene very quickly. So you just take these sliders, moving them around, get your elements in the exact position, and that's that. So that's the utility of Ring. And what's really cool is you can also extend this to have color pickers and stuff like that, so you can quickly change colors and find out, it's not just for position, scale, and rotation, it's for many other things as well. So it's very helpful. So next up, let's kind of talk about interactivity. How can we use GreenSock Animation Platform, or GSAP, to maybe tween this from maybe a Y position or a Z position based on a click? Well, the first thing is we need to install GSAP, because it's not currently a part of this package or this library that I had you download. So what we're going to do is install GSAP first. So with that said, I'll come over here and just add a new terminal. We're going to do npm I GSAP. So that's going to install the GreenSock Animation Platform. And then after that, we'll go ahead and import it up top. All right, so we're going to say import GSAP from GSAP. And there we go. That's all we have to do. And now we have the ability to then go ahead and create like a click event of some sort. So what we'll do is under our ring stuff that we have here, let's say let canvas L equals document.query selector canvas. So we're going to make the whole entire canvas, or the whole area right here, because this whole thing is like anywhere I click on here is going to be the canvas element, because it's seated on top with position fixed with a Z index that's higher than what's anything else. So we're just going to make it so if we click anywhere here, we're going to change the Z value of this element and also change the color. So here's how we do this. We're going to go ahead and say canvas L.add event. Here, let's get rid of this. There we go. Listener. Now this is going to be on a mouse, on a click rather. All right. And if we want, we could pass it in the event. We don't need that, so let's just do this. And what we're going to say is we're going to create a constant that is operating on a ternary operators. So what we're going to say is const target z equals, and let's create a Boolean value. So we're going to say let is z positive equals false. All right. So we're going to go here and we're going to say is z positive. And we're not going to keep these values right here. So if it is, if this is positive or if this is true, it'll be set to -3 for the scale, which or the z position rather. And if not, we'll set it to another value that we will go ahead and use Dat.gui to help us determine where we want it. All right, so if you're a little bit confused still, just hang with me. So now what we do is we use GSAP too. We're going to take the sphere.position because we want to be able to manipulate the z property. So what we do is we specify as the selector in our GSAP2 call the actual sphere.position. And inside of here, we can just say z now. And then we could say target z. All right, we could give like a duration of 2, maybe an ease of like, let's zoom out. Power 3 and out, and there we go. Now the reason I did this this Boolean value and this right here is because when we click it, I wanted to toggle back and forth between these two values right here. And so with that said, we'll just have to take our is z property and just flip it from true to false, based on a toggle essentially. And we do that with this line right here. All right, so let's go ahead and save this. And let's see what happens. So on click, what happens? Oh no, nothing. So let's go to F12. Don't worry, this is oh, there, it started to work that time. All right, well, let's refresh and see what happens. I think it's because, oh, okay, now it's starting to work. So now it's at a position of 3, which is hidden from us because it's kind of behind the camera now. If we click it again, it goes to -3. All right, so very interesting. But notice when we start it, it's kind of right here. If we refresh, it starts there. So that's not at -3. If we wanted to begin at -3, we could take our position. Oh, wait, it is actually at -3. Because, oh, no, it's not. I'm sorry, I was looking at my reference code. If we go over here and we say sphere.position .x or z equals -3, it's now going to start off in that position right here. All right. So if I click it, it's going to go all the way past us. That's too far. So what do we want to do? We'll take our z and we're going to find, maybe we want it to go like right here where we're inside of the actual ring, which happens to be a value of 1.78. So all we have to do now is update this part. This will be 1.78. Let's save it. Let's go back, refresh, click it, and it's going to be right there. Awesome, awesome, awesome stuff. Now, why would you want to do this? I don't know. It could be a cool, perhaps, effect if it's relevant based on whatever's happening in that, that section of the landing page or whatever you're building. But let's see, how would we change the actual color of this? And it's not quite as straightforward as just taking GSAP2, like another line of GSAP2 and just changing the color. It's a little bit more involved than that. So basically we have to put everything, the color into an object, a JavaScript object. So what we could do is say const, let's zoom up here. We're going to say color object equals, of course you name that whatever you want, and we just wrap it in a generic object essentially. So we have a property of color, and we're just going to say black, okay? Then the next step is to take our GSAP2 call, and we're going to say color object. So we passed in that generic color object, not the thing that we're trying to update. And then we can say color is going to be change color. Now change color doesn't yet exist. We're going to add that right here as a constant. And again, it's just going to be another ternary operator. So we're going to say const change color equals, and there we go. Is positive, it could be black, otherwise let's make it red. All right. So these the actual Z value of the position, and the color is tied to the value, the truthy value of this Boolean property right here. So if it's not positive and it's kind of set far back at -3, it'll be black. When we click it, we want it to turn red. All right, so now that we have changed color, we're gonna say duration 2 is, again, just another power 3 in, out. And then we call on update, which this thing knows what I want to do already. And it's basically almost exactly what we want. So we're going to say on update, we're going to say sphere.material. So when you create the mesh from the geometry and the actual material, you can still gain access to the material through the mesh that we created and we named sphere. So we can say sphere.material.color.set. And then we simply call our color object .color. Okay, so let's save that. And let's go back to our project. Let's see if it works. And there you go. There's that really cool toon sort of aesthetic with that harsh shading. It goes away. And of course, we can always click on and change that color, the original color. So if we change this to, like, let's see, I don't know my hex codes offhand, but let's just do FFCC00. I think I was using that before. So by default, when it loads, yeah, it's that yellow color. Yeah, so we could also change that right here as well. So if we take this and we go back from here, instead of making it red, we'll just make it the same color. So it's going to be this. So now we can go back. Here, let's go back. I think I still have it black. It showed up black for a second, and I think that's because of this element right here. So let's paste that in. Here we go, and there we go. So now it's just transitioning from a non-black, so some other color, a primary color, to red. And that's how you could change the object's color, and it's just for a primitive. Now, of course, you can import your own, custom objects that have their own material on them already, and that's something that we're definitely going to do as well here coming up. But now, I can't stress the importance of what you just learned here, because it unlocks in a world based on what you've already learned through like scroll animations and stuff. You can just tuck this stuff within a GSAP scroll, and you can make this stuff do whatever, the 3D elements do whatever you want. So it's very powerful, and we will be utilizing that as well. So let's continue on.